Hey, and welcome back to the podcast. We're here with Samir Balwani. He is the CEO and the founder of Qry, and their website is weareqry.com. Now, Qry is really good at scaling brands. They're an e-commerce marketing agency. So Samir is going to tell us some fun and amazing stories about his unique secret sauce and what he does and his failures and successes and what we can learn from him. So Samir, super great talking to you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm really excited to chat.
And I'm excited to chat too. And so this is your show. This is your floor. So what has you focused these days? What has you passionate? What has you just excited to start the week sometimes?
Yeah, I mean, I'm telling you, right now is a really fun time to be in ecom. I mean, it is challenging right now with just how consumers are spending, but I think that's what makes it really interesting and exciting. So, in the retail world, there is so much opportunity for people to get in front of people, to find ways to engage with them. And with the fact that it's always changing, there's always something interesting to try and something new to do. So what are we excited about right now? I think for anyone that's been in our industry, the whole transition from Google Analytics, from Universal Analytics to GA4 has been a really fun, and I say fun sarcastically, experience. But it's definitely led a lot of our clients and our teams to really think through, okay, well, what does attribution and measurement really mean for a lot of our clients, and how are we thinking about it more holistically versus just dollars in, dollars out, really thinking about it from a brand perspective as well. And so that is definitely one of the things that we are really leaning into, really excited about, helping our clients really understand what is the best way for them to measure the results of their campaigns and how to move forward from there.
And you're tapping into something that I think is really important, which is this idea of thinking, right? And it's easy to think maybe at the wrong time, or to not think enough, and to be like, oh, well, I made that plan 6 months ago and then I did all the stuff. And it seems like what a lot of the e-commerce guys and the analytics type of guys are really good at is on knowing when to kind of shift back and forth, right? Because it's really easy to not take any action and just be stuck in thinking mode and have all these master plans, and then you don't get anywhere, versus you take all this action and you just on a runaway freight train, and you're not going back and being kind of slow and deliberate and looking at the data almost obsessively. And so whenever I talk to e-commerce guys such as yourself, I always ask kind of like, how do we tap into this sort of recurring obsession? Because it seems like the kind of thing where if you're not careful, then you're missing all these pieces in your business. You're not looking at the data. You're not making these good decisions. So how do we become the type of kind of like more on purpose, obsessive business owners?
Yeah, it's really funny because I think ecom has the tendency to have this frenetic pace to it. And I blame like Shopify app, where every time it dings, every time a purchase goes through, like people just feel that like energy that they need to really focus in on every individual transaction and see what happened, and that myopic view, that microscopic view in terms of each transaction, each thing that's happening, you start to lose sight around the overarching strategy or things. And so that's actually, I think, one of the biggest mistakes that most e-com marketers do, is they overly focus on little day-to-day, hour-to-hour trends instead of really looking at the whole. And we do a really good job, and we push our clients to really think, okay, is this a blip, or is this a thing that we should really be focusing in on? Because I think a lot of people make the mistake. So yes, you should think and then action. It's not enough to just think. You have to action on it. But you also have to remember that action costs money. And actually doing things means that you're taking a risk. And so let's say your hit rate on making the right decision is 70%, which would be great. Like no one's 100%. Let's say you're 70 to 80% right on an action. That still means you're making 20 to 30% of the wrong decisions. So if you make a lot of decisions really fast and that rate comes down to 50%, it's going to cost you a lot of money. So why not make sure that you're very thorough and very confident in the decisions that you're making, versus you're just changing things for changing sake. You should really understand what the expectation is. And so that forces you to think and forces you to take a step back and be like, should I actually change this? Or am I doing this because I'm nervous or feel like we have to change something just to change something, or I'm getting swept up in kind of what's happening around me. And so, yeah, creating these roadblocks to force us to stop and look around is really key.
That's some really deep thinking, that there might be some uncomfortable truths. And if you haven't yet grown and scaled your business, then it's like a blank canvas, and everything's important and anything is possible. But then once you get all these things in place, once you have all the sales coming in and you have like the workflow and the employees and all the website and all these things are kind of carefully, delicately in place, then suddenly priorities matter, right? And it's like if you might do something that makes you kind of uncomfortable. Like, I mean, we're all in these systems where there's all these different pieces kind of strung together, right? And like I had this conversation a couple of months ago with, I had this client where he had like 4 different payment systems all working together, and he felt a little uncomfortable about it. And I was just like, well, it's working, it's in place. And you could either put your time into kind of pulling things out and making and breaking things, or you focus on like increasing your conversion rate or working on your marketing or working on the things that will actually kind of change things and make you money. And you mentioned in there that like taking action costs money. Like it's easy to think that, oh, I'm just putting in the extra time. Well, you put in time in something, it takes away from what other things that you could be doing. And so like something that kind of blew my mind a bunch of years ago was, at one point I heard someone kind of talking about this relationship of money and time, right? And when you put money into something, you kind of like accelerate time. And instead of something taking you like 10 months, it can be done in like 10 days or 1 month by throwing more bodies at the problem. And that's kind of another mindset I'm looking to look into, is like in, again, with you like e-commerce guys and with scaling and thinking, like, do you ever think about that? Just the whole like getting into that mindset of like valuing your time more than money, and maybe being a little less afraid of putting money in the business to get more time out of it? Do you ever think about these things?
I mean, that's just exactly what we tell our clients all day long. Like, you can scale either through money or time. And like, if you've got a good product and a good positioning, and you've got some word of mouth going, and your business is just growing organically, great. It'll scale at whatever that organic growth rate is. It'll just take a long time. Or you can pour a ton of money into it and help scale a little bit faster, but it's going to cost you money. And there's definitely, diminishing returns over time. So, we help our clients really understand that element of, okay, well, how much, if you need to shorten the time in which you scale, and for some clients, it makes perfect sense for them to do that. They get cost benefits on bulk orders, or they're trying to reach a certain revenue target because they've promised an investor that, and they just need to invest to do that sooner rather than later. It makes sense. But for some of our clients, no, it doesn't make sense. You don't have this like need to grow at a specific rate. Let's not invest overly, and let's grow slowly and methodically. So it's really helping them understand that pendulum almost, and where do they want to be on it, and then build out plans accordingly.
I love it. And so like you're imagining a pendulum, and what the picture that's in my mind is like there's like a treasure map, and there's different points, and you want to go from like here to there to there. And it's like if you're pointed towards the next dot on the map, then dump in the gasoline. But if you're pointed in the wrong direction, then putting in all this extra effort will put you way in the wrong path where you don't want to be.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be very very confident that the direction you're going in is the right direction, right? Like, I'll give you a perfect example. We will run a new campaign for somebody, a new client, and it'll be like, we want to run TikTok. I'll give you an example. We want to run TikTok. We'll never go to a client and say, hey, we want to run TikTok. Let's do $100,000 a month in TikTok right off the bat, right? We have no idea if that channel is going to work, what kind of messaging needs to be. So originally we're going to test it, make sure we're pointed in the right direction. And then once we see it working, all right, let's dump a ton of money into it and let's start scaling it up and see how that goes. But it's interesting because the idea of the map is really accurate. And this idea of making small changes to get you closer to where you want to go. When you're really far away and you try and point yourself to the point, if you're off by a little bit, when you get closer, you're going to be off by a lot. And so that's where it's, earlier on, you're just trying to get into the vicinity of that point. And so you just need some positive notes to know that you're going the right way. Pour some money into it. As you get closer, don't stop. Don't think, all right, cool, we figured it out, we're going to keep going, we're just going to keep pouring money into it, we'll get to where we need to. Stop, pivot, make sure you're pointed in the right direction again, make those incremental adjustments and continue on. And I think that a lot of people don't make those incremental adjustments and just get to the end after pouring a few $100,000 into something going, well, why didn't that work? Well, we never stopped to check if we're going in the right direction every step of the way.
Part of the whole strategy process, right? Of accounting for things that you don't plan for and just making the little tiny corrections. I love it. And so when dealing with e-commerce, I'm sure that you're in all kinds of weird and crazy, maybe not obscure niches, but just like, industries that we don't even think about, like all these things that we never see that make the world go around. So do you have any fun stories to share with us about just some of these just never heard before companies, never heard before industries, and some of these problems you solve?
I mean, I'll tell you, we've gotten everything from like fishing gear to like ball bearings. Like it's just interesting. So it's interesting. No specific story around anyone. I think when you really look at it, the best brands, the ones that we get most excited about, have this community around them, and the niche. The more obscure the niche, the more excited the community, which is kind of awesome and fun and motivating. But no like specific stories around it, other than you just don't realize how many people buy all kinds of things and just like passion. Like we saw a client the other day that's like in the yarn industry, and it's just knitters, right? Like it's awesome to see things like that. And we look around. One of the questions that we ask our team members when they come on board is like, what are you passionate about? We love looking for niches in those things, because it's fun to work on clients that in the industries that you're excited about. And so we really try and match that as much as we can.
Well, fun. And yeah, sometimes you hear about like you're bringing to mind like the talk show John Oliver gets into all these weird obscure areas. And like I think at one point he like made the whole knitting community angry at him. And they were like making all these posts and writing all those letters. And I was like, I don't even know there was a knitting community. Yeah. That's freaking crazy and funny. And so would you say like, is the whole community aspect, like, is it something that is it essential, or if a brand doesn't have it, should it be something they should be like looking into, like building that social media, creating the video content? Do you think it's something that maybe like people should be like leaning into more these days?
Yeah, I think it is essential. And I will caveat community around community is more like passion around your industry. And so let's use knitting as an example. For you and me, yarn is a nice to have. For someone in the knitting community, yarn is a need to have. And so transitioning your brand and product from a nice to have to a need to have for some segment is absolutely the most important thing if you want to continue to grow. And more importantly, if you don't want to shrink when the market's not doing well, when demand starts to stop. I think we're at this pivotal point right now where a lot of brands that drafted off of COVID demand are starting to realize, oh man, we never invested in our community, and we just did really well because people were buying everything. And now that consumers are starting to pull back, they're the first ones to get hurt because they don't have a community that's really excited or feels like they need their product. And so, yes, I think having a community that is passionate about your brand and your product, and that you solve something for that community, is absolutely integral for growth in the next stage of ecom.
I love it. And so we've been thinking about just some of these important aspects to keep in mind. These things that there's like simple foundational concepts, but they're so simple, it might be easy to forget to build that community and be focusing on how to transition them from a nice to have to a must have. And some of these ideas that you've explained, like looking at your data and thinking and knowing when it is time to scale or when it is time not to scale. And so when you look at just the various mistakes being made in e-commerce and these clients that come to you, do you see like a number one mistake, or is one of the big mistakes one of these things we already mentioned?
Yeah, I mean, I think the number one mistake is just not having a really clear understanding of the problem you solve for your consumer. And I think one of the biggest things is a lot of brands don't really understand their audience. They understand the audience they want to have, and they don't understand the audience they actually have. And I think that is a really core mistake that is made by almost all sides of business. This hope of I mean, there's so many. We work with a lot of luxury lifestyle brands, and I'm always surprised. Like they are, it's always a fun meeting when we go in and we have to explain to them who their audience is and who's actually purchasing and how it's wildly different from the persona that they hope to have. And really helping them understand why that may be happening, and then really understanding the problem that they need to be solving for who they want to solve it for is key for success.
That's very spooky in a good way and interesting to think about, that whole buyer persona. It's easy just to kind of brush it off and treat it as a cliche, but I like the way that you're thinking about this, in that a lot of these companies, they're thinking in terms of the buyer persona they want to have and all the attributes that they have. And so they're kind of not, the marketing's not quite sticking. But then if they can come to an agency like you and pour through all the customer data and look at these things, then you can come to them and say, well, you think that they're this, but really they're all this stuff. And then if you can maybe speak more in terms of their language and mirror what they want, then you can amplify kind of what you've already stumbled upon accidentally, instead of just trying to change all these things. Is that about kind of a good kind of summary as far as the mindset shift that some of your clients have?
Yeah, that's exactly right. For us, we're a pay media agency, and so one of the most important elements of it is really understanding who that customer is and what motivates them. Where do they engage with media? How are they going to actually engage with our creative? And so audience and community ends up being really important for us, because we want to know who the customer is, what motivates them to actually purchase, and what problem do you solve for them? So that way we can lean into that and really lay that out for new people. So yeah, all of that is pretty important for us to be successful.
So is there a brand that really impresses you that we should all aspire to be? Like sometimes you see like Delta or Wendy's or Taco Bell, they kind of, it's almost like I can go to like Taco Bell's Facebook page, like expecting to laugh, expecting a joke, and they just seem to always kind of be, it feels like sort of on the nose for some reason as far as like talking to their customers. So is there any kind of brand that you kind of consider to be like a really good role model as far as like having the feedback loop really figured out?
Yeah, I'll tell you. So we work with a client, Peak Design, and I think that they have absolutely nailed this in every step of the way. Their culture internally is exactly their culture externally. The amount of work and energy they put into each one of their products, it shows up. They've got such a great sense of humor that resonates, and all their ad campaigns kind of resonate around it. And they've built this community of people that are super passionate about the brand, and they want to tell people about it, right? Like I'll have a Peak bag and be walking around the airport, and somebody will absolutely inevitably stop and tell me, oh, I have that too, that's an awesome bag. And that's what you need to build. If you The best brands grow from that. Advertising is just gas on the fire. The bigger your fire, the bigger that we can grow it. And so that's where we talk to clients and say, that passion and community, that passion that you have for your business, if your clients don't have it for your brand, it's not going to matter. And you got to figure out how to get that.
I love it. And so a lot of things are making sense to me now, because sometimes you'll see some company and you'll see like the Facebook ads they run and their Facebook community and then their website. And there's like one of those like staff pages with like everyone has a really good photo and like the group photo of everyone. And sometimes it seems like just it all kind of makes sense all across the board. And so that's what you seem to be talking about here, is having the culture inside and out. So that way it's like the people working there are just as passionate as the customers. And even like you were mentioning a few minutes ago there about when you have a new hire, you say, well, what are your hobbies? What kind of obscure niches are you into? That way, like the excitement can just be there all around. And it's not just like putting on a show. It's kind of within and without, all kind of all existing. And so if someone out there in podcast land says, okay, well, I really like a lot of what Samir has to say, and I want him and his team and his agency to help me with my e-commerce brand, how do they know if they're like a right fit or right size, and what problem should they be looking to solve when contacting you?
Yeah, I'd say one, just contact me. I love helping ecom brands, regardless of size. You're just getting started, just contact me. Like, I will share my thoughts and we'll have a conversation, and I'll be rooting from you from the sidelines. But if you are looking, if you're running paid media already and are trying to actually scale it up, that's the right time to be reaching out to us. We'll help you kind of implement the systems and processes to actually grow it over time and get you to where you need to be. The easiest way to reach out to me, weareqry.com, hit the contact page. You're going to reach me directly. So that's the easiest way. And I'm excited to chat with anybody.
Fantastic. And I think that you're doing something that we all need to be aspiring to do, is to be like just constantly excited to solve problems and help people and communicate and just be a service to the world. So weareqry.com to check out Qry, see what they can do for you. Hit that contact button and contact Samir and tell him about your problems and the solutions that maybe he and his team can provide for you. So as we're wrapping up our conversation here, Samir, it's always fun to end with like a number one tip or piece of advice or quote or moral or lesson. So what comes to mind to you as far as any of those things? Do you have a favorite quote or a favorite saying, or what do you have to kind of end this conversation with a big bang?
I'll tell you, I'll give you one of our core values around curiosity. I think the best brands are the ones that are always excited. The best brands, best people, best business owners are the ones that are always excited to learn something new and challenge the status quo. And I tell people, even if you aren't sure about it, let's try it. Let's figure it out. Let's see how it works. And I think that is ever more important in the marketing world than it has ever been before. And so that's what I leave with you. And I'm excited to see what people come up with after trying new things.
I love it. Excitement, curiosity, experimentation, challenging the status quo. And you can do all those things in one and more by going to weareqry.com. So check out Qry and Samir and his team, and we'll see you there. And thank you very much, Samir, for blowing our minds, giving us some really good life advice, business advice, personal advice. I really appreciate what you had to say.
Thank you so much for having me.